join us for Casino Night. We will be enjoying the sounds of DJ Ray and DJ Stefan as we eat, drink, play, and raise money for the local cancer community. Tickets are $50 in advance at ways.givesmart.com. Again, that is ways.givesmart.com. With your ticket purchase, it'll include $500 in casino cash, 1 drink ticket, and 1 ticket to our food truck. Our virtual auction begins September 12th and will conclude at the event on September 16th at 8 p.m. There will also be opportunities to purchase Way swag, win really great wine, and other wonderful prizes that have been generously donated. We cannot wait to see you there. Hello, and welcome to the Let's Talk Fucking Cancer podcast. We are your support, so let's talk fucking cancer. Guys, welcome back to the studio today.
Yes, welcome back. Thank you for coming back.
Julia, thank you for being back with us today.
Of course. Glad to be here.
How's your guys' week been?
Really good. So when I got here, I held back something.
Uh-oh.
I won $1,200 at bingo last night.
$1,200 at bingo,
right?
Nice. I
had a great week.
I love it. Very
lucky charm.
Yeah, right? I swear it's always beginner's luck. Yeah. But that's definitely like the biggest jackpot I've ever won.
Bingo too.
Yeah.
I love it. That was my grandma's
bingo.
favorite.
Who'd you go with?
I went with some friends who also happened to be nurses that I met through the oncology world.
Very cool.
So, yeah.
How about you, Joel? How was your week?
Week was good. Work slowed down a little bit, so it was kind of nice coming off of a very busy end of the month. So
I was going to say, you were saying it was super busy there for a while.
So busy. So I have like an office job, so I'm just, it's like, I won't even get into all the details, but
this is her side gig.
Yeah. No, I would say this is my main full-time job. But yeah, so it was nice to, have that slow down a little bit, get to focus back on transportation and wedding stuff.
Right.
Planning
that's
bachelorette party. Yes.
We have a wedding coming up for our Antonia, my other twin.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So Julie is the maid of honor and working hard on that. Yeah.
Oh, that'll be so fun.
Yeah. We just came back from Cancun. So that was fantastic. Oh my gosh. It was heaven. Coming back was so sad, but we're happy to be here now.
You're still so tan.
I told Julie, I said, I haven't even been in the sun in a week and I'm still so tan.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm just going to ride on this tan for a little while. But yeah. And then our first podcast came out on August 1st.
Yes. So thank you. Yeah, just thank you for the outpouring of support and kindness and just the positive feedback. Yeah, it was really
cool. It was an exciting day. I took off. It was kind of good for me. I took off and went to the Tina Turner musical that day. So I was able to not sit here and just watch the numbers all day.
I think Leah and I did that enough for all 3 of us because we kept texting you what are we at? What are we at? How many listens do we have? And you're like, I'm at the concert.
But it was fantastic. And so coming home, I checked the numbers and we had done so well for our first day.
And we actually were a top trailer on Apple Podcasts.
Yes. Leah sent us a screenshot and she said, is this real? And it said top trailers and ours was right up there.
We didn't make it to top podcasts though. So
one day.
I'm worried if people listen to the trailer and then decided not to subscribe.
No. I think what happened is not all podcasts do a trailer at first. I feel like sometimes they'll start and then they go back and put a trailer in.
Right.
So I think, we put the trailer out a couple weeks before we released. So we had time for people to listen to it.
Right.
And then, our podcast first episode just came out this week. So we have time, I think the trailer is a good sign that, at least people listen to it.
Yes.
Well, I just had to keep us from getting a big head,
I know.
No, but it's been a fantastic week and we're so lucky today. We have our first in-studio guest, Sara
I'm really
Stratton.
excited.
Yes, from Remission Nutrition, and you are an oncology nutritional therapist, correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, tell us, how did you get into that field? What brought you there?
Well, what brought me there was my own cancer journey.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've always been I call myself a nutrition nerd.
Okay.
My whole life. When my mom took me out to eat when I was younger, we would always go to the Sizzler. I don't remember if you guys remember the Sizzler.
Salad bar
was my favorite.
My favorite.
And I would always pick up all the broccoli and cauliflower. And then the people that were working there, they'd come over to my mom and say like, did you make your daughter eat like this? And she's like, no, you see my plate, it's all mashed potatoes and other things. And she's always like, so I've always been really into nutrition and health, but my own cancer journey brought me to kind of support others through nutrition and kind of further my education in oncology nutrition.
So tell us about your cancer journey.
Yeah. So when I was 37, I was actually listening to a podcast.
Wow.
And they were talking, it was just a group of girls that have a podcast, and they were talking about doing a self-breast exam. And I was like, I haven't done one of those for a long time. So I was driving and feeling around, and I was like, I feel like a little eraser kind of on my breast. And so didn't think it was anything. I had 2 daughters, and one was 2 years old, and I was like, probably milk duct clog, but I should probably get it checked out.
Well, and can I, like the fact that when you say it felt like an eraser.
Yeah.
That is the most descriptive explanation that I've ever had, because it's always just check for a lump.
Yeah.
Just check for a lump. I happen to have dense breast tissue, so it lumpy. So,
Having
so
something
like very finite. So so it felt like an eraser.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure probably everybody feels a little bit differently, but that's how it felt for me, and it was tangible. Kind of thinking about it as I went through treatment, like, the eraser's kind of going away, So
Right.
So I was diagnosed when I was 37 with stage 3C triple positive, HER2 ER PR positive, and so pretty much a shock to me and my family. So that's kind of where it all started. And
so does that mean that yours was hormone receptive or non-hormone receptive?
It was hormone receptor positive. So ER positive, estrogen positive, progesterone positive, and then HER2 positive. Mm-hmm. So as soon as I kind of found that out, I've been working in healthcare for 20 years, but more on the administrative kind of professional side and marketing and strategy. So thankfully, healthcare was very close to my heart. So I was able to accelerate my path and, knew who to go to and when to go to them. But that's kind of how it all started.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what did that cancer journey look like before we get into the professional side and what you're doing now? How did your cancer journey look?
Yeah. So as soon as I was diagnosed, and I figured out kind of the staging of everything, I was led into the traditional path, right? So for me, because it was already accelerated, was immediately into chemotherapy.
Okay.
And so my journey looked like chemotherapy for about 4 to 6 months.
Right.
And then I did surgery after that. And so I chose to do a lumpectomy, and then also reconstruction. And I think luckily for me, because I was in the medical field, I knew about oncoplasty providers.
Oh, okay.
And so I had the ability to get to my lumpectomy and reconstruction at the same time. And so I know a lot of people that are thinking about different surgeries, they have to kind of wait and kind of get reconstruction later. And so I really thought it was really cool to find an oncoplasty doctor.
Yeah.
And she actually was a cancer survivor herself, and a younger one too. She was also 38.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. And I've never heard the term oncoplasty.
Yeah.
No,
Oh, yeah.
I hadn't either.
And I had my own plastic surgeon that worked with my oncologist, my surgeon, but I hadn't heard that term. That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah. So a great find for me. She was in San Francisco, so an easy travel. And so I had my surgery, and then a few months later, I went through radiation.
Okay.
And so that was I think I had probably about 40 sessions of radiation. So it was a longer kind of term radiation. But kind of going back to when I was originally diagnosed, immediately when I heard the word cancer, I reached out to my functional medicine doctor, who I had already had a relationship with from working on just health holistically. And I said, oh my gosh, this is happening to me. What do I need to do to support my body going through all these treatments?
And so for functional medicine, explain that to me.
Yeah. So in my case, functional medicine providers could be integrative medicine providers, DOs, naturopaths.
Okay.
There's, a lot of different types of functional medicine providers. And so mine was an integrative medicine provider. She was traditionally MD, and she switched over to kind of more functional medicine. And I had a consultation with her right when I was diagnosed, and we got on a path to support my body with nutrient-dense foods. Fantastic. I did a lot of fasting. I did keto when I was going through treatment to support my healthy cells, sauna, exercise, sunlight, all of the things just to kind of keep my body at a state of homeostasis as much as I could during kind of the traditional treatment path.
Wonderful.
And did you feel like though that also helped you support your mental health?
It did, because it gave me something that I could do for myself.
Right.
And so a lot of people, when we're diagnosed with cancer, we're relying on the oncologists and the surgeons and our medical team to lead us through it. And we're asking them, what am I doing next? But taking it into our own hands with lifestyle strategies, we have control of certain things. We have control of when we go to sleep. We have control of what we put in our body. We have control of our relationships. And so I really believe that supported me. And I think because I had that alternative approach, my chemotherapy was much smoother. My radiation was much smoother. Now working with a lot of cancer clients, I see that chemotherapy, their numbers look, they're always testing their white blood cells.
Right.
And because of chemotherapy, they might have to delay treatments. That never happened to me. And I believe that was because I was supporting myself so holistically during that time.
Wow. Okay. Listening to you, I already have a client in mind who I need to get into contact with you. I love this so much. That's great, because I definitely had I wanted to take a more natural approach and do more natural, holistic things for myself and work especially on my mind and stuff throughout. But I didn't have a functional medicine doctor.
Yeah.
That would have been a great resource to have.
Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of people are at, because they might not have access to one, and because treatment usually happens so fast. Once you're diagnosed. And so if you don't already have one in your back pockets, it might take a while to get in to see somebody. So
Okay. Wow.
yeah.
That's awesome.
I think it's probably so overwhelming for a lot of people at first too, when they first get that diagnosis, that you don't even really know what you can ask. Like I would have never thought I could have asked for any sort of integrative medicine doctor. I think you're told kind of the rough outline of what your treatment's going to look like, and you don't know that you can ask for other things like that.
Absolutely.
So, do you have any sort of suggestions for how to bring that up, to a doctor? When should people ask that right away from their doctors, if that's available to them, or how should someone go about that?
Yeah. So I think, definitely researching what they have access to through their own insurance or through their own healthcare organization. For me, I went through Sutter Health. And so we had integrative medicine within Sutter Health. So I was able to access those providers, but a lot of people don't have access to that through their own healthcare organization. So they need to look outside, and they can do a lot of research, just kind of going and looking for a holistic provider, looking through for a naturopath. And so sometimes the traditional oncologists, they might not have those resources, and we have to be our own advocates and do our own research to find who is part of that team for us.
Yeah. And a lot of times insurance may not cover it. And so I'm very glad that your health system supported that.
Yeah.
And it may be an out-of-pocket expense, and depending on your insurance, your HSA will cover it, or you can submit for reimbursement. But it is out there, but you may have to be willing to pay out of pocket.
Yeah, for sure.
It's interesting because I went through Sutter Health as well. And I know now, but I had no idea back then that they had the integrated medicine.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't talked about by my doctor. It wasn't talked about by my nurse advocate. It wasn't talked about by anyone. So I didn't even know it was there.
Yeah.
And now after the fact, and after learning so much, I've learned that those things are available to us. But even when you're in the system, if you don't know, you don't know. And so getting this information out there is so important.
Yeah. And I find, a lot of providers have different thoughts about functional medicine.
Right.
And some might not agree with it in its entirety. So when I was going through my treatment, I was like, hey, I'm fasting through chemotherapy. And, some of the nurses were a little worried about me, right? And they just were like, oh, I don't think that's smart. We don't want you to lose weight. We don't,
What was the thought process, or what was the reasoning behind fasting going through chemotherapy?
Yeah, so there's a lot of research for fasting during chemotherapy to support your healthy cells. So obviously chemotherapy is attacking your whole body, right? It's kind of going after those cancer cells, but it's also going after the healthy cells. It can't kind of spot treat. And so with fasting, it puts the cancer cells more at stress. So the chemotherapy can be more effective at targeting them, but also it kind of helps protect your healthy cells. So there's usually less side effects for a lot of people who are going through treatment using a fasting protocol.
Wow.
Excellent.
The things you learned.
Guessed.
It was when I got diagnosed, I happened to be on Whole30.
Yeah.
We used to do Whole30 every 6 months. And my mom immediately said, stop. You need to eat. You need to, eat all the things. I don't want you to, lose weight and get sick. And I struggled going back to normal eating because I felt like the Whole30 was doing so much better for me. I did go off of Whole30 and go into eating kind of whatever we had at the time. But it's nice to hear that doing these other things is okay. Taking a different approach is okay than just listening directly to what the doctors say. Don't deviate from the path. And, you can do some other things to help support those healthy cells, like you were saying, where chemotherapy targets all the cells.
Yeah. And when I was going through my treatment, thankfully I had my integrative medicine doctor, but around that time a book came out and it's called The Metabolic Approach to Cancer. And it empowered me to understand how the mechanisms worked, how different food supports our body, so that I had the background to know, like, going into this, like, I felt comfortable with it. And I think everybody has to have their different comfort level of what they're taking on themselves. And then also to be able to explain that to their medical team. Right. Because it is different, right? But it's what makes us, unique is our approach to everything. So, yeah.
And it's funny, I actually did do a program through my doctor's office where part of it was fasting, and the nutritionist's reasoning was you deprive those cancer cells of giving them something to feed off of. Yep. And now when I fast, I just I picture my body just fighting off, or either fighting them off or the cancer cells just shriveling.
Yeah, right? I kind of picture them popping.
Starving, going away.
Yeah, I just picture them kind of popping, pop. You don't get any fuel, pop, pop.
There
and I kind of feel like that with fasting, exercise, sauna. Those are all kind of hormesis, ways of hormesis, hormetic stressor that puts the cells at stress a little bit. Okay. And so cancer cells aren't as resilient. And so when they have a little bit of stress, they might, go into apoptosis and autophagy.
So when you were going through your cancer journey, you went ahead and did some fasting through chemo. What else did you do?
So I did fasting through chemo. I did the ketogenic diet. Okay. So that is a very low carb, high fat diet. Right. That kind of has similar effects to fasting to put those cells at, a little bit of stress because they don't have that glucose as the fuel. Right. So I did the ketogenic diet. I did a lot of sauna, infrared sauna, just to help with the detoxification, but also that stress on the body. I did a lot of light, getting outside into nature, walking, movement, and I did exercise. I was always a big exerciser, and thankfully through chemo, I was able to exercise, maybe not at my same, intensity, but I was able to do that almost daily because for me, that was important for my mind and my body to stay strong.
So can you talk about giving yourself the grace to go easy on yourself and not feel like I have to be at 100% and I have to push myself to 100%. So how would you say, what level do you think you toned it down to from on a scale of 1 to 100?
So I probably toned it down to 60. Okay. And so when I was meeting with my integrative medicine doctor, she had said something to me with, the way I exercised, it was always depleting me, right? I was very intense, very early in the morning, kind of working out as hard as I can. And she said, kind of reframe it to exercise that lifts you up, that adds more into your life. And so I did, then I switched more into doing more yoga and doing more walking and making sure I got out into the sunlight versus an Orange Theory at 5 a.m., and again. So
if you don't puke, you didn't.
Right. That's kind of what I didn't do it super consciously. I had a good friend of mine who came over all the time to make me walk. Yeah. And she made me go on 4-mile walks a day. I don't even do that now, which I should, but she had me getting up and going. And if I said no, she would sit down on the couch and stare at me until I did. Yeah. And so, getting out into the sunlight and doing a 4-mile walk. And that actually opened up the door for me to do another chemo on top of what I was doing that we really wanted to do. Yeah. And so, I feel that nature, the sunlight, getting out there and getting that activity really, really does help.
Yeah. And it's really supporting our ATP and our mitochondria too, right? Exercise helps generate that energy so that our body can kind of, stay strong through the traditional treatments.
Wow. Awesome. That is fantastic.
So, my journey was, so I started my chemotherapy in March, and I did chemotherapy until July. And at that point, I was able to do another PET scan that showed no evidence of anything flaring on the PET scan, which was amazing because all my traditional providers were saying that's probably not going to happen. That's not what we're expecting from this treatment for you, just for how far it's advanced and also for the HER2. So seeing that PET scan really ignited my passion, saying I do believe all of these things I'm doing for my lifestyle and my nutrition really gave me that advantage.
That's fantastic.
I love that you had your own empirical evidence.
Yeah,
Yes.
I know, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, because when I was waiting for those results, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Right.
And so then
Was there a little bit of like, also like, I can't wait to prove you?
It was a little bit of that, but I think still so much nerves, right? Just because in that point in time, you're just like, I don't know what's going to happen, and but you have to just trust in yourself, and even so much around like just the placebo effect in general, right? If we believe and we trust in ourselves, outcomes will happen,
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So you were diagnosed stage 3C.
3C.
So was it invasive to your lymph nodes?
Lymph nodes and chest wall.
Okay.
Yeah. And so when I went into surgery and I had the double lumpectomy, because I actually had DCIS on the other side.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I had a double lumpectomy. I had the lymph nodes taken out on the side that had the lymph node invasion.
Okay.
But then I was able to, after that surgery, within about a month and a half, get back to weightlifting, which kept me strong to go into radiation.
Right.
Good.
And then the radiation cycles lasted me through the middle of November. And my birthday was on November 4th that year. So I was hoping to be done at my birthday, but since they extended it a little bit, it was a little bit past. But on November 4th of my birthday, I did a Spartan race with my friends in the middle of chemo, in the middle of radiation with my bald head.
That's amazing.
Lymphoma sleeve. And so
I
it was
really need to reevaluate some of my life choices.
But it was just a way for me to prove myself that like I can keep my body strong through all of this.
That's
right?
fantastic.
So-
I have a client friend who she was doing the same. She was weightlifting, she was running, she was working out all the time. And I was so amazed at how strong she was being. And I mean, I did my own walks and stuff, but nothing to that degree.
Yeah.
And it was just really, it was inspiring. And her journey was a little later than mine. So I was like, man, I wish I did that stuff,
Yeah.
But integrating it now and later into my life has helped. For sure.
And I think it's all, you might have done other things that supported your body, right?
Definitely.
And so for me, that was kind of what I went to kind of, keep my mind off things.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that.
And then I did, for a few extra months, I did the targeted therapies for her too. And then as part of my treatment path, I also had my ovaries removed about a year and a half later, and then was on tamoxifen for a while. And then I'm on an aromatase inhibitor. And so 5 years out now.
5 years.
That 5 years in March
Congratulations.
here.
Congratulations.
So, yep.
Fantastic.
Great.
I love that.
So when did you make this your life, your passion?
Yeah. So I think once you're a cancer survivor, other people come to you from word of mouth, right? And say like, hey, my aunt just got diagnosed. Can you talk to her? Or I got diagnosed. Can I talk to you? And so I was getting people coming to me asking for my thoughts on things and just wanting to chat. And I knew enough from my own path, but I didn't feel educated enough to talk about the mechanism of why and the purpose of things. And so I wanted to be able to do that for others as part of my path to help educate, to help others learn, to support themselves through treatment, to support themselves before treatment, to support themselves after treatment. So I made the decision to further my education as a nutritional therapy practitioner. And then I've been working with people for a while just on hormone balance and guts and weight loss. And then I wanted to take that a step further to get my Oncology Nutrition certification so that I can actually work with patients and clients going through cancer.
That is fantastic.
Do you find that it helps patients or people in general to really adapt their or change their lifestyle or integrate certain things such as exercise or, some sort of clean whole food eating? Do you find that it's easier for them to stick to that once they know the mechanisms behind it and how it actually works inside their body, like on a cellular level?
Yeah. When I finished my first credential for a nutritional therapist, I named my company Purposely Rooted, because I think going back to the purpose of why we do things is so important. And it's like, yes, you should eat some more cruciferous vegetables, some more broccoli, some more kale, some more arugula. But unless you can connect that to like estrogen detoxification, and different things like that, and the anti-cancer aspects of it, but also the hormone regulation aspects, it's like, well, why am I eating this? And so once you can connect to those things for the food that you're eating or your lifestyle practices, I feel like it's more achievable and it's more consistent.
I love this
makes
so much.
total sense. Yeah.
We get so many questions about nutrition and so many questions about hormones and the nutrition and a lot of things I don't know and I don't know how to answer. So finding you is such a blessing because we can get some of those questions answered and bring those people to you and help them out so much. I just love this.
Yeah. It's part of my passion just to help others. And hopefully one day my ultimate goal is like to be in Hawaii on the beach, but also have my part-time practice as a
consulting
nutritionist.
from an iPad.
Yeah, consulting from the iPad. So I'm just kind of working up to that
I like
for my
your plan.
retirement.
So what brought you to Remission Nutrition?
Yeah. So when I completed my education with the Oncology Nutrition Institute, the owner of Oncology Nutrition Institute also had started up Remission Nutrition.
Oh, gotcha.
And she had recently sold that so she can focus on the school. But she said, hey, you really have to meet the owner of Remission Nutrition, Jen Nolan. You guys will get along so well. And so we had our first Zoom together. And it's like, hey, I think we were meant to be paired up together.
I love
and
that.
so it was just so awesome because I wasn't sure what I was going to do after I was done with that education. I was like, oh, maybe I'll see a few people on the side here and there. But to be able to be brought into a group who's been doing this for a long time and have that sisterhood and support and case review and foundation has been so amazing. And I'm so happy and excited.
Wonderful. So how many practitioners are there?
We have 4 total. So just a few of us. And a few of them are located in Colorado, one in Texas. And then I'm the only one right now on the kind of.
So you are able to do national consultations and work virtually with patients and clients?
Yeah. We see everybody by Zoom. We actually have people worldwide.
That is exciting. Yeah. Oh yeah. I am so excited. This is so great.
How xenophobic of me to only think of
Roseville.
Right. I know. Oh my gosh.
Well, the amazing thing is that we work in partnership with a lot of naturopath providers. And so they send us referrals for nutrition many times because the naturopath provider or the integrative provider, there's so many things that they want to spend their time with their patient on. And so diet, nutrition, it takes so much time, and our goal is really to meet everybody where they are, and to support their body depending on their type of cancer, where they are, what kind of treatments they're in, and so we can.
So you come up with an individualized plan for them.
Yeah, for everybody, and we are really terrain focused. And so the book I mentioned before, The Metabolic Approach to Cancer, it kind of goes back to like having that great terrain, the soil in our body to make cancer in a hospital place to survive. And so we kind of look at digestion, hormone balance, inflammation, your immune system, your stress. And then we kind of look at it an individual and say, where are your biggest opportunities? And develop a plan for them.
Okay. So what are some of the most commonly, or what are some of the supplements that you use a lot?
Supplements, I would say vitamin D is like queen.
Yes.
Such a great kind of anti-cancer supplement and hormone. So obviously we can go out into the sunlight and get vitamin D, but there's not many foods that we can get vitamin D from. And so for most people, they do need a vitamin D, probably supplements. Something that we also do is we look at we hope to look at most people's genetic SNPs. And some people have a SNP for vitamin D uptake, like myself. So when I was diagnosed, my vitamin D was like 25, right? So very low, even though I am a sun worshiper. So that means that for myself, I have to supplement with extra vitamin D to keep my levels higher. And so I would say that's always a go-to.
Now, when I was going through cancer, I was trying to read every study, every research, anything on triple negative breast cancer. That's what I had. And they were showing that these high levels of vitamin D were actually killing cancer cells. And is that true? That to your knowledge, what do you know about that in the vitamin D fighting cancer?
Yeah, I think vitamin D, like other things, kind of help support anti-cancer effects. So there's different hallmarks of cancer, like immune evasion, right, is one. And so vitamin D supports your immune system so that cancer can't evade it as easily.
Okay.
And so it has anti-cancer actions against the hallmarks of cancer like that, supporting your hormones, helping induce apoptosis perhaps. So there are anti-cancer actions. There's tons of studies on vitamin D levels and cancer. And it's nice to go into treatment with higher levels, but also keep those levels up kind of ongoing. Yeah.
That's good to know. I don't think I started taking it until it might have been after treatment or right during treatment. Probably around the middle of treatment, I learned about it and I was reading about it.
I feel like during chemotherapy was when all of a sudden there were all of these supplement bottles of vitamin D3, the
turmeric, grapeseed.
Yes.
And I jumped into a bunch of supplements just reading, going, okay, I think this will work. I think this will work, not really knowing and having any background in it.
Yeah.
And asking my doctor, she was just like, yeah, go ahead.
I know.
And she didn't really have any advice for me.
Yeah. So supplements can be a slippery slope during chemotherapy and radiation.
Right. We were going to ask about that because of the oxidizing treatment. And if you're taking antioxidant, is that?
And it just actually, it's very bio-individual, right? Okay. So there's so many different types of chemotherapies out there. And different types of chemotherapy have different actions.
Okay.
And those actions can be different on how the antioxidants are used. So for a lot of chemotherapies, like there are some really great supplements that kind of go hand in hand, like high dose vitamin C, right? Is something that really is supportive for a lot of chemotherapies, but also helps people feel better through their chemotherapy regimen. And another great one is melatonin. And so there's a lot of studies on having melatonin during treatment and how that helps you stay more resilient and have lower side effects and more effective cancer treatments. But then there's some other ones that it just is very dependent on the type of cancer and the chemotherapy, like curcumin, like glutathione. So it's very individual. So we look at the type of chemotherapy that's being used and do a contraindication kind of checker against the different supplements to see what's synergistic, but what are things that we need to avoid during the treatment for chemotherapy and for radiation.
Okay, that's fantastic, because I know someone like me, I just jumped into let me take everything I've heard can help with cancer instead of going to somebody who knew this is what you can take, this is what you shouldn't take. And, having had a resource like you at the time would have been amazing.
Yeah. And that's something we definitely help people with supplements. And also naturopath providers are really great in helping people understand supplements. Also, if it should be something that's taken orally or like a high dose infusion. So kind of getting a team together to either somebody that's very versed in nutrition for cancer and looking at those supplements, but also a naturopath type of provider, integrated provider that has that level of education.
That's good. I know that when I had been going through it, I think I was just done with treatment, and at the time, I had been terrified of taking any antioxidant because I was getting chemo. And I want to say it was on the East Coast, they were doing IV vitamin C infusions with chemotherapy. And I was like, wait a minute. Yeah. That goes against everything I thought I knew. Yeah. And then come to find out, it is such a huge help.
Yeah. And there's different types so obviously antioxidants are in pretty much all types of plant foods, right? So we never want somebody to avoid eating blueberries or, getting those brightly colored pigments and polyphenols in their foods. Their foods, I feel like, are always pretty safe. It's those high dose supplements that we just need to be more wary of. But sometimes at a lower dose, a supplement could have like an antioxidant effect. But then sometimes at a high dose, like the IVC, it's like a pro-oxidative effect. Oh, okay. And so it's just very individual each time around.
That's good to know. Yeah. That's really good to know. I love that.
Yeah. So one thing that I've heard that I've always been curious about, and it kind of just popped into my head, so I'm glad we have you here, is I've heard that disease can't thrive in an alkaline environment. So do you have any takes or opinions on keeping your body at an alkaline state?
I think the way I think about that is eating the way we eat in an anti-cancer environment and with nutrient density. If we eat a lot of plants, a lot of green, and avoid the processed foods, our body will be in that state more naturally. Okay. But if we start to eat inflammatory foods and sugars, so that's kind of the point of view that I take looking at it in that way. Okay. Because I think if we're looking at our terrain and our soil, if we're feeding our bodies, leafy greens and great pigments from teas and herbs and spices, our body will get into that zone where it needs to be very strong and kind of make cancer in hospital to thrive.
Okay. Yep. Okay. I love that.
Yes.
Do you have, so you're saying it's very individualized. Yeah. And what do you think though, or do you see a difference in diet shifting through treatment, after treatment and such? Because during treatment, you're getting your chemo, your radiation, all those things, and your hormones are being disrupted and we don't quite know where we're going to land at the end of that. And then at the end,
you're kind of learning your body again and your hormones, mine were out of whack. And I have quite a few clients who this is a huge question with them is now after treatment.
Yeah.
Should their diets be different than it was during treatment? Should we be focusing on a different train of thought through each stage, or is it just kind of individualized again?
So I think from our approach, we always focus on the metabolism, and our approach is very much the metabolic approach to cancer. And so making sure that our blood sugar is balanced is probably foundational. And just because the blood sugar, if we have too much glucose, it can kind of maybe support some of the cancer pathways. And also it makes us feel crummy. And if our blood sugar is up and we're eating high carb foods, our immune system is suppressed. So I would say the metabolic approach and blood sugar balance is always foundational. And then I think it always goes back to the individual, how, I guess, aggressive they want to be during their treatment. So for my example, when I went through it, right, I had already learned about the ketogenic diets and fasting. So I was like, hey, I'm going to throw everything I can at this. And so I'm going to be very aggressive. Right. And then I was pretty aggressive for about 2 years out from treatment, still doing very ketogenic focused diets and fasting. But then I had my ovaries removed, right? And I was in induced menopause. So, I found myself 3 years into menopause and like, my body's changing a little bit. Right. And so then at that point in time, I was like, I need to reassess my nutrition. Right. And so that's when I started to bring in kind of more proteins, a little bit more kind of carbs in the form of like some carrots and some beets and other vegetables. And so I think it's very individual based, but I think depending on if it's a hormone driven cancer and you are losing your hormones, there's a lot of different things that maybe go into it. Then also the stage, right? If somebody is at a more advanced stage, they might have to be, a little bit more focused on nutrition longer term. Okay. And I think everybody that has a cancer diagnosis should learn how to kind of support their metabolism into cancer and then after cancer and what that makes sense for them at that point in time.
Okay. I like that. Very nice.
So what are some, just to kind of sum up all we just talked about, because I know it was probably a lot of information. What are maybe like 4 or 5 major things that a person can do to help balance or support their hormones, maybe during and after treatment?
Okay. Number 1, make sure you're pooping.
Okay.
Yes.
And that during treatment is tricky.
Yeah, it is very tricky during treatment.
So like a probiotic, would you recommend like a probiotic?
It just depends on the person, because probiotics can help for some people and it sometimes doesn't help for some people. So,
and that's another one of those categories where there's a gajillion of them. So you want live, viable, refrigerated probiotics because you don't want to feed your gut dead bacteria.
Yeah. And then there's also some new soil-based ones that are also very supportive. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Like metabolism and
yeah. So, but if we're not going poop regularly, we're recycling estrogens.
Okay.
And we're recycling toxins.
Okay.
And there's different estrogen pathways. I mean, we don't want to be recycling those bad estrogens, right? So we need to make sure that those hormones, those toxins are getting evacuated from our bodies through making sure that we're going poop, making sure that we're sweating, making sure that we're drinking enough water to, get out through our pee. So all of those areas and ways of evacuation, breathing the right way, we need to make sure that all the toxins are leaving our bodies. Yeah.
All right.
And that kind of also goes hand in hand with eating enough fiber. Okay. And so for our kind of metabolic balanced diet is very plant forward, but it's not vegetarian. It's not vegan.
I was going to ask, is it a plant-based or?
It's plant-based because we believe plants are the center of everything, right? But we do use a lot of animal protein just because it has all the complete amino acids that support our neurotransmitters, support our detoxification. And so I think, making sure we're eating fiber, making sure we're eating great animal foods, and then also healthy fats. So healthy fats are essential for optimal hormone production. And our foundation is really the Mediterranean diet is like,
love that diet.
Oh God, force me to eat dolma, please.
I actually just recently did a whole deep dive on the Mediterranean diet, and I was like, this is going to solve all my problems in life.
And we really focus ours on the vegetables, the healthy animal proteins, wild caught fatty fish, and olive oil. I feel like is like
I was going to ask what your number 1 fat was.
Yeah, olive oil all the time.
That's all I use.
It's like
I just heard a story about it was somebody from Greece noticed that he, I think, lived, I don't want to misspeak, he was over 100.
Yeah.
And someone had asked him, like, what do you do to keep up your health? He said, I drink 1 little glass of port every day, and I take 1 tablespoon of olive oil every day, just as a supplement.
I do. I love that. That's why I suggest to my clients is just think of olive oil like a supplement, right? And you know, if you need a little kind of like shot glass to make it exciting, you know, go for it. But you know, I just drizzle it on top of my vegetables. I use it in my salad dressing. I take it as a supplement. You know, olive oil I think is awesome. So
Nice, fantastic.
That's awesome. I think that's great tips for I'm sure.
And then I'll just add one more that I really always think about too for hormone production is just really supporting the gut, right? If we don't have the right microbiome balance and we have more of the kind of pathogenic gut bacteria, those guys love, you know, processed foods. And so when we eat foods that are processed, higher carb, those guys are like proliferating and they're crowding out the good bacteria. We want all the good bacteria. Those guys like the fiber. So all the greens, like the artichokes and the asparagus and your spinach, they love that stuff. And so the more good bacteria we have, the more stronger our hormones are, the more our inflammation work, or our immune system works, and we can fight off inflammation. And I really like to think about our gut as being kind of a multifactorial system. So there's prebiotics, and that comes from all of the great, amazing, like colored vegetables. And then there's probiotics, and that comes from like the sauerkraut and the kimchi. And that helps kind of support and build more of those healthy gut bacteria. And those create postbiotics. I don't know if you've heard of postbiotics before, but those are the magic that happens when we feed the probiotics to prebiotics, and that helps our create B12. It helps our neurotransmitters. It's kind of like the magic juice after all, you know, to support our gut bacteria and microbiome.
Well, and there's also the brain gut axis. And so a well-balanced microbiome really heavily influences your mental health and is really great for depression and anxiety. So, I mean, it's just, there's so many good things about good gut health.
Your hormones, your mental health, you know, your inflammation, you know, everything starts in the gut.
Especially after, you know, you've had chemo and your immune system has been, you know, wiped out. It's so important to repopulate your gut with that good bacteria.
That's a great point.
Something that I think I'm going to put on a t-shirt. I talked about it with one of my clients was when in doubt, sauerkraut.
Oh, I love it. I love that. I need one of those.
I'm a kimchi girl. Can you come up with one for kimchi?
I'm a cricketer. I will make you the shirt.
Awesome.
I love it. So speaking of the diet and all that, do you have, which I'm assuming you do, but a preference, organic versus non-organic, and any kind of tips do you have for that? Because you hear so much about, oh, it doesn't matter if you eat organic, it's still tainted and blah, blah, blah. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah. So I think about it like in a framework of good, better, best. And so I think good is organic, right? I think organic is awesome. And I think if you want to start kind of at that base level, at least doing organic with the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with EWG, but they come out with the Dirty Dozen Clean 15 every year. And those are the vegetables where the glyphosate is more saturated in them. You know, like think about a strawberry, right? You're just... you know, any kind of pesticide is just saturating that strawberry versus if you're eating a banana, right? That banana has, you know, the skin to protect it from the pesticide. So definitely I think starting, you know, with the Dirty Dozen Clean 15. And then if you can go, you know, all organic, if you know, as possible, that's better, right? So just because our soils, our rainwater, the water does have, you know, pesticides in it. And then I think best is getting at your farmers markets. Because you get it local, you get it seasonal, you can talk to the farmer, you can say, do you spray? Even if they don't have that organic certification, you can kind of learn, and it's local, so it has higher polyphenols. So I think that's best.
And if you don't know where your local farmer's market is, you can literally Google farmersmarket.org, and they pull up a schedule and based on your zip code, and you can find a local farmer's market.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love ours right out here at Whole Foods. Yeah, that's my favorite one.
I drove by mine today.
I actually hit the one on the way here because I was like, I missed mine. So I was like, I bet there's one up in that direction. So I Googled it. I'm like, I'll head it on my way up.
Yep,
so I have my veggies in the car right now and
I have to
an ice pack.
It's so funny. I have been talking about these strawberries, and any of my friends listening, they've already heard about these damn strawberries. I can't stop talking about them. They're so good. They taste like candy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like I literally go to the farmer's market.
I know. So much different than the
just for
store.
the strawberries.
Yeah.
Yep. I learned, it was so funny. It was years ago when I was actively in the nursing world, and Farm Fresh to You was a big new thing.
I forgot about that.
And so we started getting the boxes, and one of my coworkers, she said, you're going to be so shocked at what that carrot tastes like compared to the little shaved down baby carrots that we get at the grocery store. And I told her after I got my box, I said, I haven't had a full carrot like that in forever. And it was phenomenal. Like it tasted so different.
I have such a hard time coming back to the States after traveling internationally because nothing tastes good.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember we were doing an excursion in Costa Rica. It was a cooking excursion. And we had, we made this salad and there was no dressing on it.
Oh, but
and I forgot what a tomato tasted like. And it was the most delicious thing. Like I can taste the memory as I'm talking about it. But yeah, that just those just got
actual natural flavor. When I was doing Whole30 all the time, in one of, I want to say, the books or something I watched from them, they were talking about how at one of their conferences, someone was saying, but I can't add sugar to my strawberries. Like, how is it going to be sweet enough? And they said, try the strawberry itself, just the strawberry. It is
so
sweet
Chef
enough.
Jose,
And what's that?
I just saw Chef Jose's, one of his chefs was talking about peeling strawberries.
Oh.
And so you don't,
peeled a
taste
strawberry.
the seed or the skin. You're just getting
I love it all anyways.
strawberry.
Yeah, but it's funny to think that we've done things so long over time, like adding sugar to your fruit or when it's naturally sweet.
Yeah.
Why would we be doing
your
that?
vegetables,
Boiling
and
your vegetables to death and getting rid of all the good stuff.
Yep.
And it's like, there were so many things I was raised doing that I'm thinking, what in the world are we doing adding sugar to our cereal and our fruit and boiling our vegetables to death? And so, growing up, I've learned a lot of better ways to do it. But since cancer, I've definitely learned a lot of better ways to do my food.
And so, it's funny. I was doing my Instacart order this morning and I noticed that organic is pretty much the same price as regular now.
Oh, really? It's kind
I
of
honestly I'm stunned at what the cost of a head of cauliflower has come up to.
Yeah. Everything's
but literally
expensive right
an
now,
organic cauliflower head was the same price as non-organic. So why wouldn't I go with organic?
Yeah.
So I know that not everybody has access to that.
Yeah.
So what are some budget-friendly options for people who may not have that kind of grocery budget?
Yeah. And I work with a lot of clients that actually live in places where it's kind of more of a food desert, right?
Okay.
We're so lucky in California. Everything grows amazing here.
Especially
we can get it fresh.
Sacramento.
Yeah. We're in the prime area for great vegetables and fruits. So
I never realized that until I moved to the East Coast and went grocery shopping for the first time. Culture shock.
Yeah.
Please. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, it's true. I didn't realize that too much until I started working with so many people that don't live in California. And I say, do what you can, right? But we can always use frozen vegetables organic if we don't have fresh.
Okay.
And so usually if they don't have fresh, you can go to the freezer aisle. You can get a bag of frozen broccoli, cauliflower rice, asparagus. There's a lot of different things you can find in the frozen aisle. And I think that's a great option if you don't have that option to great fresh produce.
Okay, cool. That's good to know.
Thank you for sharing that.
I always steer clear of canned. Do you feel the same way, or do you think that there's still some benefit to canned?
I mean, it just all depends on what you have access to, right? And so if you don't have access to the fresh and you can only have cans, then look for the great best quality canned, right? And just kind of meet yourself where you are so you're not too stressed about it.
I like that saying, meet yourself where you are.
Yeah. And my little tip and trick that I always tell everybody is like, herbs and spices are such an easy way to kind of get those extra nutrients. Say it's like, okay, I didn't eat a ton of vegetables today, or I don't have access. Like, I haven't gone to the farmer's market for the last week, so I didn't have a lot of veggies. Right. And so this morning when I made my eggs, I looked in the pantry and I was like, okay, I got this spice, I got that spice, I got this herb. Okay. And so I'm like, I'm still getting a lot of the great polyphenols and antioxidants from vegetables, but in a spice and herb form.
I never thought about it that way.
I love the thing about herbs and spices, and I think I used to think vegetarian food was boring. Oh. And now I realize how boring like a traditional meat and potatoes diet can be, because you rely so much on the flavor from the meat and the meat juices, whereas in a vegetarian or vegan plant-based diet, you're using a lot of spices and seasoning, and it's almost more exciting because you're almost getting more adventurous flavors and better flavor profiles than just, beef broth or chicken broth. Or,
I've actually heard that from one of my other podcasts is one of the hosts was talking about when they switched from, traditional diet to vegan, and they were saying some of their friends were like, oh, don't you feel so limited? Like, don't you feel like there's so many things you can't have? And he was like, no, I've discovered so many things that I can have that I feel more creative. Yeah, it really opens up a lot of creativity and just like freedom to incorporate foods that you would have never done before with like that traditional like meat and potatoes and rice and
I love
pasta.
that. Yeah. I even think about like my meals. I'm not like a big artist in like the traditional sense, but sometimes I make my plate look like art, which is kind of weird. So it's like I look at all the colors and I'm like, okay, I got my protein, I got my chicken or my fish or my eggs, right? And then I got my veggies, but I'm like getting all these colors and placing it nicely, and then I'm getting my nice good fats or my hot sauce to kind of make a little rim around it, my microgreens on the side. So not it's really silly, but I'm like, oh, it's art.
That's great.
I cannot eat a dinner that is all one color. Yeah. There's something so off about it to me that I'm like, this isn't right. I need more color.
Julia and her fiance are amazing at their diet and cooking. I think I don't know that she knows I really think that of them, but I think they're so inspirational. They're very into food, and pretty
huge foodies. For me, it's more about the taste. He is more about the actual cooking.
That's a good package.
But they're great at adding. They add in all the things to their diet, and I've been so proud. I'm like, yes, they do really well with adding the vegetables and all the different things to the meal.
Lentils
to make it
have become such a great meat substitute for us for, if we're doing anything with traditionally you would make with like a ground beef or a ground turkey. Lentils, treating it like seasoning it like with some sort of like taco seasoning for enchiladas, or just using it as a ground meat substitute has been insane. And it's an amazing protein.
Yeah. I saw one influencer who was using jackfruit as a substitute for carnitas.
Oh my gosh. Interesting.
I mean, I feel like there's so many substitutes, but I always go back to like having animal protein is also very important, right?
Definitely.
And so if we're limiting that protein for a certain reason because we think it's healthier to replace it with something else, it's like those animal proteins are kind of nature supplements.
Okay.
And so if we're thinking about the ground beef and the ground turkey, it's like I kind of think about that like I'm getting my zinc and I'm getting all these great things. I'm getting my amino acids.
It's almost nice to get permission to eat meat.
Yeah. Eat it, girl.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Because a lot of times, especially, I don't know if you found this when you were in your cancer journey or after, but a lot of times I was being preached to go vegetarian or vegan.
Yeah.
And I felt so bad and like I'm doing the wrong thing.
As women, at least I've heard and have been told so many times, just time and time again that dairy and meat, they mess with your hormones, and as women it causes high rates of cancer. And there's so I grew up thinking that dairy and meat, red meat, were bad for me. And
I think it goes back to quality, right? And so some of the conventional, easy to access meats and dairy probably aren't the best for our hormones because they're feeding those cows, corn and sometimes Skittles, and they're injecting them with hormones. And so that's why quality is king or queen. So looking for the pasture-raised chicken and turkey, looking for the wild caught fish, the grass-fed beef. So amazing. What a great multivitamin.
There was a documentary and I never knew the difference between corn-fed and grass-fed, thinking, it's just, it's all nature. But then learning that the cow's stomachs don't digest the corn, and then seeing them post-mortem with undigested corn, you're like there's your evidence right there that it's just sitting there creating gases and you know it's like, oh God, what? And I was like, grass fed from now on.
Yeah, you want them out eating the grass, roaming around, walking, right? And happy cows, right?
But it is nice to get the permission to eat meat or animal product because I feel like a lot of times coming out of cancer, you're not given that permission.
Yeah.
And I am just simply a meat eater. And I'm absolutely anyone who's vegan, vegetarian, fantastic. I think that's great. It's not for me.
Yeah.
And so I've tried to live as clean as I can since I'm having animal product. And I do feel like it's beneficial.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, like you said, meet where you're at and what you can do. So we try and just make sure that I did Butcher Box for a long time, which is fantastic, but it's pricey.
Yeah.
And so, the husband's like, hey, what else can we do here? So I'm just a little more picky and when I go shopping and, find my own meats.
There's a lot. I mean, go to a butcher shop.
Oh, yeah.
There are, and they have great prices and you're supporting small local farmers.
Yeah.
If you have the access, if you have a large friend group, go in on a cow or a pig together.
I love that. Yeah.
You're going to get, the cuts you want and you're going to know what you're getting.
Yeah. Where it came from exactly.
Yeah. And I was nervous too when I was going through my cancer journey, kind of being more on the far side of plant-based. Yes. I still had some animal protein, but as I've learned more, I know the purpose of it.
Pressure off a little bit more, and that's great.
Yeah, and I know the purpose. And when we get back to the metabolism, right? Lean or meats in general have limited impact on our blood sugar, right? And fats have limited impact on our blood sugar, but the grains, the processed foods have a very high impact on our blood sugar, right? And so if we're eating, how I think balanced is having that animal protein on your meal, having those vegetables in abundance, and then having some nice fat. That is balanced, and that will prevent a lot of blood sugar spikes and dips. Wow. And that's what really goes back to supporting your hormones and supporting your mitochondria.
That is so good to hear. I love this. I know so many of our clients who are going to be so excited to hear this because they're big questions about the blood sugar and hormones and all of that and what they should and shouldn't be eating.
Yeah.
You feel kind of stifled sometimes when you come out of cancer because we talked about, was there any long-term changes for me?
Yeah.
And I said there was many short-term changes, many. Yeah. I didn't know where to go. And I kind of slowly fell into a comfortable place where I felt like, okay, I'm still going to have animal products, but I'm going to just do better with my choices and be a little more cognizant of what I'm putting in my body instead of all the processed stuff and making sure it's grass fed and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like there's so much to learn and there's so many conflicting voices out there.
So many.
But I think especially as us as women, and especially those who have gone through hormone cancer, and also are in early menopause, having more protein in our diets is going to be protective for our joints and for our bones. It's also having more protein and doing weight training is going to be an additional glucose sponge. So if we eat some carbohydrates, that can either go through our bloodstream, right? And then into our fat cells, or they can go to our muscles. Okay. And how are our muscles fed is from some good quality protein and then some resistance exercise. Very good. I think that's just even more important for women, especially those who are in early menopause or in menopause in general.
Right.
So Sarah, I personally am a huge fan of mushroom supplements, THC oil, CBD oils. I would love to get your take on if you feel like they are beneficial during just in general, and then also during or after treatment to help with any sort of digestion, hormonal, memory, cognitive functioning.
Yeah. I think mushrooms are magic, right? So I wasn't a huge mushroom fan coming into my cancer journey. My mom used to always saute mushrooms downstairs and I would try to hide because I just couldn't handle the smell. But now that I know the purpose of them, right? So immune modulating. And so I think we encourage a lot of people to try to eat as many mushrooms as they can as part of their anti-cancer diets during treatment, after treatment. But if they can't eat them, because say if you're going through chemotherapy and you just can't handle the smell of mushrooms, I think the supplemental powders are really awesome. I myself, for my anti-breast cancer kind of support, use turkey tail. There's a lot of research for breast cancer and turkey tail. So I use that as kind of a powdered supplement that I add to my shakes. Today, before I came, I had a little bit of lion's mane to help help with memory and cognition. And so I think that's really helpful for different types of cancers, but also just in general. So I think everybody could benefit from a different kind of therapeutic mushroom, and then adding them into your diet as much as you can. Great fibers, really supports gut health, and very immune supportive too.
What kind of mushrooms? Because I have heard that sometimes, like the white mushrooms you can get at the grocery store don't actually have a ton of great nutritional benefits, but I've heard that shiitake and is it portobello that have those great sort of immune?
Oh, I love a portobello mushroom.
Actually, the white button mushrooms, oyster mushrooms, shiitake, maitake. I think whatever you're comfortable with cooking with, I think is awesome. And so I would just try different ones. Now when I go to the farmer's market, I'm seeing more mushroom vendors.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you can talk to them about like your taste styles and how you would cook it. And then I would just experiment with it. Like I like to chop them up and make kind of like a little stir fry with some ground meats and then, some tamarind sauce. And so I think there's lots of different ways to cook it. I think it's up to the individual's preference on how you do it. But I would just say experiment and then find what you like and then just have that as a staple in your diet. It's great to have variety, but if you just nail in on one or two, I think you're getting a lot of great benefits.
Awesome. And then what about THC and CBD oil during and after treatment?
Yeah, so our bodies have endocannabinoid receptors, so CB1 and CB2 receptors, and so we could use things like CBD and THC to modulate the immune system. But it helps, just thinking about what somebody's going through traditional cancer treatments. If they are nauseous, a little bit of THC might help that. If they're having trouble sleeping, THC or CBD is really supportive. So I think it comes back down to like what you're experiencing during that time and then how you could use it. I used during my treatment to help me sleep a lot of CBD, some THC. So I think, different people have different feedback on how they want to use it or if they want to use it, but individual preference, but I think there's a lot of benefits.
I was at one of my last checkups and I saw they have a survey now on the wall in the room about THC and if you're using or not during your cancer treatment.
Really?
And so you could scan the QR code and answer the questionnaire, and the doctors, the oncology offices were asking these questions and wanting to know your experience with it. And I thought that was really cool that they're actually talking about it now instead of hush hush about it.
I feel like that's a very and I love this. I'm super supportive of this. I feel like that's a very roundabout way of we can't necessarily ask you to do a study right now, but please give us your feedback.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was really cool, and it was kind of comforting to say, hey, like my doctor who's super traditional and it's your chemotherapy, your surgery, your radiation, you stay on this path, was like, hey, if you want to take this survey. And I was like, absolutely. I just thought it was really cool that they were putting it in all the patients' rooms and really caring about, hey, what else are you doing and how is that affecting you? So I thought that was really neat that they were incorporating that now.
Yeah, once they approve it federally, I think it'll be amazing because it can be studied scientifically, researched.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I feel like there's already some great research out there, but
Absolutely.
I have noticed some of my clients, they have federal jobs.
Right.
And so I was talking, I'll talk to them about sleep, and it's like, if we've tried all of these other things, have you tried this? And they're like, I can't because I have a federal job. Right. And it's like, oh yeah.
Yeah. If we could just get it approved federally, I think the world would be a better place.
It's so heartbreaking and disheartening to hear that, because I have just, I'm such an advocate for medicinal mushroom and cannabis use. And I feel like it really just, you are less dependent maybe afterwards on pain medication for joint pain, bone pain, muscle pain, or any other sort of like pharmaceutical. Not having that, not being able to use those natural, just supplements such as that. It's just, it's so, we have to get to a place where I feel like it's, accessible to everyone.
Slowly but surely, I really think we'll see.
Yeah. And for myself too, it's like part of my kind of long-term remission plan is kind of limiting my alcohol use, right? And so every once in a while I want to have a fun girls' night with my girlfriends. And so we might have a little bit of THC, right? And it's like, I feel like it's just, kind of puts you in that more playful behavior, which is so healing, right?
It is healing.
And
it
with
helps
no hangovers.
With no hangover. Exactly.
You're not feeding those free radicals with alcohol.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So to kind of, segue from diet and supplements, into lifestyle changes, what changes do you feel have, the most positive effect on the mind and body, both during and after treatment?
Yeah, I think regulating stress is huge. Before my diagnosis, I was kind of like an adrenaline junkie, and I was like, the more stress, the better, and that's something that I had to really kind of get in touch with myself about, to not take on as much and be intentional and purposeful about what I did take on. But also just learning how to breathe is so important. It's like, I feel like nobody learns how to breathe right. And so once I understood.
I have it tattooed on my arm.
There you go. I love that. Yeah.
Because I needed a reminder.
Yeah. It's like, if we can breathe through our nose and slow and rhythmically, it sends a message to our brain that we're not in a stressful situation. So it resets our nervous system so we can be more in that parasympathetic rest and digest.
Yeah. So to kind of continue that about, being, getting to a place, that parasympathetic, state.
Yeah.
And how that affects your well-being.
Yeah. So in our parasympathetic state is when we can digest. It's when we can remove the toxins from our body, and we can support our immune system. And so many of us are always in that kind of stressful, kind of sympathetic, like fight or flight, and we don't even know it. And so I've been more intentional about taking breathing breaks, breathing through my nose, just laying outside in the sun during the workday if I can, just to kind of rebalance myself. Because I think before my diagnosis, it was like, go, 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 go. And it was never, I was like, I don't need a break. I need a break. We all need a break.
Up until 6 months ago, I finally acknowledged I was living in fight mode.
Yeah. You can feel it, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is probably the most on the go person I know. Leah is on the go. And I'm just like, I don't know how she does it.
Yeah.
You're just go, go, go. And I'm just like, woo.
Now it's more stuff that fills my cup than stuff that I'm, obligated to, or having to stay busy, or just, I don't know. It just, but yeah, I acknowledge like there was just something like anxiety in me. And it was like, I finally, after, just kind of doing some shadow work and stuff, it was like, no, I'm constantly living in fight mode.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was going, I don't want to do that. And taking a step back and being mindful and just, filling my cup.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like when we're going through cancer treatments, it is very scary, and there's a lot of stress that can come of it. And where you're going through treatment, you're feeling like a little pain in your body, and you're like, is that the cancer spreading? Yes. And then you're going into a panic attack. And so going into treatment, and I think just at any point of our life, learning how to regulate our stress response system is so beneficial, so we don't get into that scary place.
Well, and I feel like it also has allowed me to lead from a place of love and kindness and empathy.
Yeah.
Yes. Right.
Because I'm not shields up, guards up.
Mm-hmm. You're not hypervigilant.
Yes.
It's
hypervigilant. That's exactly. Yeah. Like head on a swivel, just waiting, making sure I'm never caught off guard.
And it's definitely a process. It's definitely a process to learn how to get out of that phase, because I know that during my treatment and right after, I was hypervigilant on everything and living in panic mode at all times. I'm sure you completely understand.
Yeah.
And it's like I had to learn how to take those moments, take those breaths, get out in the sunshine, and literally let my mind just stop for a minute, because I could not, my mind was spinning all the time.
Yeah.
And I definitely, I went into therapy, and that's helped a ton, but it's like, it's a process to go through all of this and get to a place where you can feel like you're just in a more calm state.
Yeah.
And so just people working on, getting to that state and doing the things that they can to maybe help their mental health just kind of catch up with their physical health,
Yeah. And I think there's little tools and tips, and I think it's individual for everybody. Like, can you do meditation? Is it just breath work? Do you want to try an adaptogen? Right. Is yoga right for you? Do you want to do Reiki? There's so many tools in the kind of anti-stress toolbox, and I've tried most of them, but it's like you can kind of go, once you learn them, can kind of go back to your core, and figure out what works best for you. What do you pull in when you need it most?
Yeah. And actually, to go back a little bit, can you explain what an adaptogen is? Is that like ashwagandha or?
Yeah, an adaptogen is a plant agent that adapts with your body. So if you are very low energy, it kind of helps bring the energy up. If you are too high stressed, it kind of brings you down to the middle. So it kind of helps bring your body into homeostasis. So things like holy basil, ashwagandha, rhodiola are all different types of adaptogens. Even turkey tail and different mushrooms that we talked about are adaptogens. They're modulating our immune system. So there's so many different adaptogens. And I think about finding what's right for you. So I use like holy basil more often because sometimes the ashwagandha can kind of promote some of the hormone excitement a little bit. So just finding out the right one that works for you and working with somebody that's educated on it is really helpful.
Very nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. If someone comes to you and you find they have a block and they're just not able to at that moment get what you're telling them, or they're just kind of blocked on the exercise and getting out and moving or any of that, do you have any good tips for trying to break through that?
Yeah. I think picking one thing that you can do, right? Just kind of really focusing on one change at a time, because we get so many things thrown at us.
Okay.
And so finding that one thing that works for them at that point in time and saying, forget about the other things. Where's our focus and what's the purpose for that? Going back to that.
Well, we appreciate having you here today.
We could sit here and talk to you.
We could talk to you
day.
I know. I love this. But I definitely want our listeners to be able to find you.
Yep.
How can they find you?
Yeah. So I do nutritional consultant at Remission Nutrition. And so we have a team of 4 people. So there's all of the services on the website. We usually do packages where we see people a few times and do a very in-depth analysis of their history, their food journal, their treatment, to really create a very individualized plan for them.
And I did check out some of your packages, and I think that they are for the value that they're very reasonably priced.
Yeah. So that's where you can find me. And you can always follow the Remission Nutrition Instagram. They post some different tips, cancer related. And then on my Instagram, sarastratton.mtp, I just kind of post about my life and how I'm living with purpose.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
for being here
Love
today.
your day. Thank you so much.
Like Leah said, we could talk to you all day long. I just love this so much. Thank you for coming today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And listeners, if you have any topics that you would like us to follow up on, or if you have any questions, please feel free to email us at podcast@weareyoursupport.com.
And follow us on all social media platforms at LTFC_podcast. Find us on Apple Music, Amazon Podcast, Spotify, and hopefully coming soon to all your other podcast platforms.
Subscribe,
review. Follow us. And we look forward to seeing you next week and talking about our second spotlight.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.